And
from the Kansas City Sports Update Studios, welcome to Kingdom Radio, where we talk about all things Kansas City Chiefs. Brought to you by Arrowhead Update. Join Chris and Richard on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Player FM, CastBox, and all third-party applications. Check us out on Facebook platforms such as Kansas City Sports Update and Arrowhead Update. And if you cannot find us there, Google or search Kingdom Radio and Kansas City Chiefs, and you will find us. Welcome to the Kingdom. Kingdom.
You're all on it. You guys can find me on the Stinking Truth podcast as well for all your fans. I have my own podcast, but being on a Chiefs podcast is kind of like eating a turd sandwich for me. So, but I'm okay. Like hey, listen, man, I like greatness, and they've been pretty good the last couple of years. So I've got nothing but, as much as I hate them, I've got nothing but the utmost respect for him. And Andy Reid is one of the best men in the NFL, and so I always root for good people to have success.
Absolutely.
That's about the level of niceness that I'm going to come with tonight. Okay, so just bear with me. That's about it for me. That is as good as it's going to get.
And we really appreciate that. And as understanding, you're Mark-schlereth. You are a Denver Bronco.
Let me tell you a quick story.
Okay.
I'll tell you a quick story. So I was at the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So Fox asked me to host this kind of chalk talk thing for all their big corporate bigwigs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, hey, we'd like to send you to the Super Bowl with all these corporate bigwigs. And so I was like, yeah, so I go to the Super Bowl. Now, it's the first one that I went to see where I was in the stands, that I wasn't playing it, right? So it was pretty interesting. And obviously, I played for Mike Shanahan for 6 years, so I was rooting hard for the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan.
Correct.
Because I've known that kid since he was a teenager, for crying out loud. And,
right.
As a matter of fact, he is the last person ever to hold a cord in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 32 was the last time that the headsets for the head coaches had cords on them.
Gotcha.
They were wireless in Super Bowl 33.
Right.
So Kyle Shanahan has not only coached in several Super Bowls, one as a head coach and one as a coordinator, but he was the last guy to hold a cord for a head coach in a Super Bowl.
Wow.
So I'm in the stands, and we're right about on the 45-yard line, about 8 rows up.
Mm-hmm.
And I kid you not, I am surrounded by nothing but Chiefs fans. And they're all in their 30s.
Right, right.
And I am talking so much, excuse my French, shit, the whole game with all these 30-year-olds, right? And we're going back and forth, and I'm crushing, because I like to think that I'm a really good loser, but I'm a really bad winner. And when the Niners are up by 10 with 6.5 minutes left, I am giving it like they're kids, they're 30s. I'm giving it to these kids. I'm just crushing them, right?
Oh, right.
And then all of a sudden, 3rd and 15 happens to Tyreek Hill, and I'm like, oh, shoot. Here we go. But I got to tell you, it was one of the coolest experiences, man. We were all hugging after the game. It was a great game. High-fiving all my Chiefs fans, and I'm like, you guys suck, but I love you. And it was one of the coolest experiences. We just had a great time. It was obviously a phenomenal game. And to watch the Chiefs win, it made me sick, but I really wasn't that upset. It was a great game, and it was a really cool watch, and I had a great experience with a bunch of different Chiefs fans that were all kind of, that stadium was done. If I had to just take a guesstimate, I bet you it was 70-30 Chiefs fans over Niner fans. I mean, it was
love it.
loaded with Chiefs. It was amazing. So
I love
we
it.
had a great time. The people were awesome, and
Good deal.
And like I said, watching them win was like eating a turd sandwich. But I had a great time. I had a blast.
And that's a little bit says some things about the atmosphere in Kansas City and the fans. We're always welcoming, no matter where we are. Even at the Super Bowl, I love the fact that it was dominant with red, but it's an experience that you'll never forget. And I love the fact that you got to experience it with Chiefs fans. But I do want to let's talk about you a little bit. I do have to ask you, what was it like growing up and playing in Alaska? I mean, Anchorage is another animal, and that's a whole other climate. And I know that had to be, I don't know, that build the gridiron in you real quick.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because it was obviously Anchorage is small. It's a couple 100,000 people. In high school when I was there, big oil town. So it was probably 225,000 people total. I think we had 6 high schools, but all the high schools were big. My high school had over 3,000 kids in it.
Oh, wow.
And like my graduating class, I don't know what my graduating class was, but I think the freshman class underneath me was about 1,000 kids. I think ours was probably like 600 or 700 something. I mean, and I may be exaggerating, but it was big. I know we had over 3,000, but we legitimately played 6 games or 7 games, so we didn't play a lot of games.
Okay.
And I loved it. I had a blast in Alaska. Alaska's awesome. I wouldn't move back there, but absolutely loved growing up there. Summertime was awesome. It's always funny because I had 2 scholarships. There's 2 teams that came up to Alaska to run a football camp, and so I was a gifted athlete. Before I had all the injuries and all the crap, but. And got really fat. But I was a gifted athlete at that point. And the 2 coaching staffs that came up, one was the University of Idaho, one was the University of Hawaii. And both of those schools offered me scholarships. I took recruiting trips to both places. And the truth of the matter is there was 2 things that made me choose Idaho. One, playing only 6 games a year when all the kids, we used to call it the lower 48, right? The contiguous 48. When you live in Alaska, you call it the lower 48. I got to the contiguous 48 and called it the lower 48. Nobody knew what I was talking about. They're like, what the hell's that? Like, the lower 48. Like, no, we don't know what the lower 48 is. But nobody knew, so I went to Hawaii, and they were in the WAC, and Idaho at the time was Division I AA. They've moved back there since.
Right.
But I looked at Idaho. There's 2 things. I said, I think I can go to Idaho. I think I can play. Like, I think I'll get time to play. And then Hawaii, I wasn't sure. I was like, I don't want to. And a bunch of Pac-10 schools at the time offered me preferred walk-on. But I was like, I don't want to sit on the bench for 3 years.
Right.
Like, I don't know if I can play there.
Right.
The other thing I didn't want to do was I didn't want to wake up to sunshine 300 days a year, 365 a year. Like, I grew up in Alaska. Like, in the summertime, it's 55 and drizzly. A sunny day, if it's 65 and sunny, like, nobody's got their clothes on. It's like, oh my God, we're having a heat wave.
Right.
And so, I really looked at those 2 factors, which at 18, I thought, looking back on it, this is a fairly mature decision. I was like, hell, I don't want to do this. I'm going to turn the light on. Hold on real quick.
Yep, no problem.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
So that's why I went to the University of Idaho, and that's how I got out of Alaska. I turned out, there was one guy before me by the name of Rocky Cleaver that played in Alaska. He played at West High School in Alaska, but I think his family transferred up there in the military. So I was the first guy ever born and raised in the state of Alaska to play in the NFL. And several, like, I think was it Eugene Tung that played for you guys? Was that he was the last kid from
Reggie Tung?
The safety? Reggie Tung, that's it. Reggie Tung. There's an offensive lineman, I think, that played for you guys from Alaska as well, maybe. But he played up in Fairbanks, like Eielson or something. Maybe it was just Reggie Tung for you guys. Maybe that was it. I think he played for the Niners now that I think about it. But anyhow, it doesn't matter. There's been a few of us. But I think I was the first guy ever born and raised in the state of Alaska to to play in the National Football League. By the way, those notes behind me, you see those notes? My wife is out of town, and she leaves Post-it notes all over on my responsibilities because she knows that she knows that I'm a failure when it comes to actually taking care of the house. So everywhere you walk around this house right now, there are Post-it notes all over the place. So I don't burn down the house, or she just knows that I have no shot at maintaining this house without her here.
Oh, that's good stuff. Hey, and that's respect to the wife and the household. Sometimes you need a subtle reminder, and I'll tell you what, I'm bad at it too, so I'm not any different. I fall in that category as well. So cheers to the old ladies who keep everything running, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, Chris, I want to get you involved here. We're going to get into the playoff game because this is what kicked off our conversation here. I kind of sparked a little fire here, and Chris, go ahead and let's get into this 98 playoff game.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so Mark, back in '98, I believe it was 3 days after the playoff game, it was reported that you and several of your teammates were fined for having a foreign substance on your uniforms. Can you clarify what happened with all of that for us?
You guys signed Michael Dean Perry, and you only signed Michael Dean Perry to pump him for information. And Michael Dean Perry told your coaching staff that we greased up with Vaseline before every game, which we did. I mean, here's the deal. When you played in the NFL back in those times, so I always had grease on my arms and grease in my armpits because of the jersey, because it rips. It's so tight, it's so skin tight that it rips your armpits up. And then as we cover our shoulder pads in carpet tape, so it's a two-way carpet tape, and we would make these little wings. So let me show you where defensive linemen hold you. They grab you right here. So right here, there's a shoulder pad here, right? And then the back plate is here. So right here is a place where that shoulder pad sticks out, and you can actually grab it, and it's something that you can hold on to, right?
Right.
So we would form these pieces of plastic. So it's like this little piece of cardboard, right? And we would paste that between the back plate and the shoulder piece, so there's nothing to grab, right? So it was a hard piece of plastic. We molded in there, and then we would tape it into our uniforms. Then we tape the jerseys onto the shoulder pads. And then, Vaseline on the arms, and Vaseline right here where you would, under your armpit, and right here where people would try to grab you. And, we did it. I did it for my whole career. That's nothing new. And defensive linemen would spray their jerseys right here with silicone. Right. And so it was one of those things, it's one of those things that everybody in the league did it. And, you're not supposed to stick them on your gloves. If I put my hands on the grass, they'd come back, it would look like I had sod on my hands. They were so damn sticky. My gloves were so sticky. But everybody did it, and it was just kind of one of those unspoken things that nobody bitched about it, right? Right. Nobody whined about it because everybody did. So Michael Dean Perry came in and said, hey, this is what we do. And so your coaches basically told the referees, and so they took us to the sideline, you've seen it, and they wiped our arms off. Yes. And so they fined us $5,000, and then Mike Shanahan called the league, and Mike Shanahan was like, it's 10 degrees out. Everybody's got Vaseline on their arms, because nobody plays. That's another reason that offensive linemen don't wear sleeves, because you can grab them. Right. So, defensive linemen are the holding sons of bitches that have ever, I'm holding on every single play, but they hold just as bad as we hold. So there's this game within the game, and everybody just understands that's what's going to go down. And so, as a football team, we just kind of looked at it really? You guys are really going to do this? You got, you don't have crap on, your old linemen don't have crap on their jerseys and arms as well. And, everybody did it. So, anyhow, Mike Shanahan called the league and said, dude, it was 10 degrees. All my guys have grease on their arms. All the I mean, everybody. And when it rains, guys do it on their shoes. They coat their Vaseline on their shoes. There's so many little things that go on that the average fan just doesn't know that we do to get ready to play a football game. And so they rescinded all those fines. Nobody got fined, and everybody just kind of said, okay, yeah, we get it. So that's the story behind that. But yeah, I had. We all have that. Well, I mean, I have Vaseline on my arms and underneath my armpits and right back here on the grab point. Like, if you're going to stick your hand back there and try to grab my jersey, you're going to get a handful of Vaseline.
Fair
or
enough.
At least you're going to get fingers. Your fingers are going to get greasy. And just know that that's going to happen.
And it's nice that,
and
that
I'm going to hold you on every single play. And I'm going to be. I actually used to tell referees as I got older. I used to tell referees, listen, the kids right now are bigger, faster, stronger, and I'm just older and more broken. And I am absolutely going to undress this guy. Like, I am going to absolutely undress him. I guarantee you my hands will be inside. I will drive him like a Cadillac. I'm going to abuse this kid. But my hands will be inside the whole time, and you can't call me for that.
There we go.
And they would laugh, and I'm like, I'm not shitting you. I'm not kidding around. This is what I'm going to do to this kid. And just understand, hey, if my hands get outside the shoulder, outside the shoulder pads, outside the front, hey, throw a flag. I get it. But I'm going to absolutely destroy him, and my hands will be inside the whole time. And they'd be like, all right, Stink, and you'd be like, okay. And I mean, I had that conversation. I can't tell you how many times I had that conversation just about before every game. And so that's it. Those are the things that go on during the course of the game that the average person is never privy to, but that's the gamesmanship, and that's the stuff that goes on a consistent basis.
So I've got to ask you, after all of that, given everything that you said, I mean, there had to have been one guy that, one player that gave you, a lot of hell and just gave you grief. What was that one player?
Well, there were several players, and the crazy thing is it's not the players you think. Like, I was always extremely successful against Cortez Kennedy. Was always very successful. Like, I always played Warren Sapp well. Like, the really good players, I was really, I really had, I really usually played pretty well. Dan Stalliamua back in the day, he was an absolute beast. And Danny was a great player. The guys that really gave me fits were guys that were super multiple and almost gelatinous. So, like, guys that if I can get my hands on you, you're done. Even though,
right.
I played at 290, 288. Like, I am, to this day, I am a freak show weight room wise.
Right.
I mean, my dad benched 300 pounds on his 78th birthday.
Wow, hey, that's a feat in itself.
My dad is 80 years old, and my dad can still probably do 10 reps with 225.
Holy cow.
So I have this from a gene. And now my joints suck, and I have a lot of injuries, but I still have ridiculous strength. And so my thing was, I don't care if you weigh 350. It doesn't bother me. I don't care how much you weigh. If you run into my hands, you're blocked. You're done. It's just, there's no way. I was just so freaking strong that way. So the issue for me was the guys that never let you touch them. Like I said, I call them gelatinous. You punch them and they just kind of absorb it.
Right.
And so there's several guys over the course of my career. Guy by the name of Pierce Holt, who played for the San Francisco 49ers, and he played for the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm a young player, Pro Bowl player for the Redskins, and we scrimmaged the 49ers in San Francisco, in London. And we have these several scrimmages. I just eat this kid's lunch, right? And from that point forward, every time I played him, he would line up literally 2.5 yards off the ball. And he'd come charging at me. He was like the Tasmanian devil, blah! And, I was such an upkick guy, and I wanted to take the fight to the line of scrimmage. And I'd just be sitting there going, oh, shit. He gave me fits. I gave up a couple sacks in a game, in a playoff game against Pierce, man. He was an absolute nightmare for me. Phil Hansen of the Buffalo Bills, a skinny little like he was just a nickel player. Like he'd come down, he's a defensive end, a little white guy, defensive end that wasn't great on the outside, couldn't really turn a corner, but he just had great hands, like a karate dude. Same thing with Dennis Byrd. Dennis Byrd had like the best hands, and he's like, and you never felt like you got a shot. Like those guys drove me nuts.
I could see you could never get your hands on them.
I'd love you to play. Yeah, I'd love you to play the power game with me all day because, like I said, there's nobody that can drive me into the back, and nobody. But I had trouble with the guys that had that skill set, that ability to move and slap your hands and do a bunch of stuff. Those guys were the harder guys for me to block.
I could see that. Mark, I want to ask you about this. We're going to get into a little serious note here, and this is just because I respect your opinion on every network that you're on. I've always respected your opinion, and I'd like to know, what are your thoughts on the video that several players, including Patrick Mahomes and Tyrann Mathieu, participated in, that was released to support the Black Lives Matter movement, and what do you think that means to the NFL and players like yourself, to have a quarterback who's not scared to voice his word and his opinion?
I think it's awesome. I think this is an awesome time in our country. As hard as it is, and it's incredibly hard. I don't know about you guys, but every day when I went to school, we said the Pledge of Allegiance, right?
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Yes.
Right? Didn't say liberty and justice for some. It said for all.
Correct.
And I think as an athlete, sometimes, you get to the point where you guys are so connected.
Right.
And, you look at your differences, whether it's where you grew up, how you grew up, the color of your skin, the stereotypical nature of what you are. And you just embrace each other for all those differences. And you start to realize as you play together. I mean, I lived in a locker room my whole life, and being a part of television for the last 20 years is kind of like being in a locker room. You get to the kind of understanding that there's a hell of a lot more that makes us alike than there is that separates us.
Very true.
And you live in kind of an insulated world, because you don't have a lot of the problems that the rest of the nation has. And, you're so myopic in what you're doing from a day-to-day basis as far as playing football and trying to be the best you can be and lifting and studying and going out and playing all that stuff, that oftentimes, for me anyhow, I just don't pay a whole lot of attention to what's going on politically or anything else. And I have always, been an incredible hard worker, but I've always been empathetic and compassionate, and have been taught to love and taught to care for people. And that's just the way I'm wired, and I've always been wired like that. And so, for me, there's part of this that is heartbreaking in that, because I have been insulated, I haven't been as involved as I probably should be. And, I've always, like I said, I've always loved people, and I've always cared for everybody on my football team, regardless of, where they come from. And that's, like, to me, that's one of the cool things about playing football. One of the best things that I've ever been a part of was for 6 years in Denver, and my offensive line coach, I love him. Alex Gibbs, he coached in Kansas City as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's an absolute tyrant. I mean, the guy is just an absolute crazy man. But one thing we did on every Friday was we would shut down the meeting a half hour early, and Alex would walk up to the grease board. We'd all be all 14 offensive linemen, all from different walks of life, from different parts of the country and different ethnicities and different, economic backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And he'd write a topic on the board, and we would sit there and discuss it. Like this like one time, this resonates with me. He goes, "Okay, Stink, your son comes home. He's 14 years old, and your son comes home and says, 'Hey, Dad, I'm gay.' Go. What do you do?" And then it became a half an hour discussion with all of us from all these backgrounds, and in this kind of this world of machismo of a football player, and it was one of the coolest things ever because we got to understand and really got to respect everybody's walk of life and everybody's background, and even if you didn't agree with the guy, you respected his opinion and where he came from. And the bottom line is you have to go out and you have to play for one another, and you've got to play, and you got to be willing to sacrifice for one another.
Right.
And I think that's the coolest thing. One of my favorite scriptures, in the Bible comes in Philippians, and there's so many that are in Philippians that are great. But the Apostle Paul is writing to the church of Philippi, and he's writing from jail, and he says, "Make my joy complete." In chapter 2. Philippians 2, chapter 2, make my joy complete by being of the same mind, the same love, united in spirit, do nothing of selfish or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, treat others as more important than yourself. And to be great, you have to be willing and you have to be able to do that.
Yes.
And the thing that's really cool about playing in the NFL is, we used to joke around all the time as players. They go, really, the only thing that's different between the black guys and the white guys, and like this is stereotypical, but we joked around about it all the time. Like, this is really the only difference. If you go to a white dude's apartment that's single, like, it's so freaking cold, you could hang meat in that apartment. You go to a black guy's, it's so damn hot that you could fry meat on the countertop. And that's a stereotype, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying it, but we joke around. Like, other than that, we're all the same. Like, there's no real difference.
There isn't.
And if you start to realize that, and you start to bond together, and you start to love one another, and you start to there's nothing that we can't overcome. So that's one of the reasons I think this is so cool that Patrick Mahomes and all the guys, Tyrann Mathieu, and all those guys got involved and really pressured the NFL to basically stepping back and looking at their stance and going, you know what, we got bullied by the political machine.
Yes.
And I'm not going to do that anymore. I've had this conversation. I actually had this conversation with Roger Goodell. Not that my conversation with him made any difference, and not that it had any bearing on his decision. But I'm glad that he made the decision that he made. But I had this conversation with Roger, and I said, the thing that pisses me off about the league is we bow down on penance knee, and we make policy change based on people who hate our game. We let people who hate our game set the narrative, with concussion issues and CTE and all that stuff. And I'm like, forget them. Screw them. If they don't like it, I don't care. It's the greatest game in the world. And I'm telling you, I had 29 surgeries over the course of my career. Football has given me so much more than it has ever taken. And I said, why we allow people to hate our game to set the narrative for the nation about our game is baloney. So forget them. Our game is awesome. It is great. It's the greatest game ever invented. And if there are people that don't like it, tough luck. Because
I agree.
Guess what? There are people lined up to get season tickets.
Absolutely.
So we'll just go with them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And the movement that is going on in the NFL right now, you said it best, is the NFL did get bullied, by a political movement, and now the players, the high-profile players finally have a voice and are like, look, this is what it's going to be, and this is where we stand, and the NFL really doesn't have a choice but to fall in line with that, and I think that's a huge aspect to the future. And Patrick Mahomes, let's be honest, I know that you'll never be a Chiefs fan or truly love Patrick Mahomes, but I know you respect what he represents. That's a huge key to the element of that movement for the NFL, because he is the face of the NFL right now.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, when Patrick Mahomes is on that video, you're like, uh-oh. I mean, that dude's a unicorn.
Yes.
I mean, he takes a dump. It's rainbow sherbet. Like that. Like he could sell that. He could sell that at the ice cream stand. Yeah, and so he's got that kind of power, and good for him. I mean, he's come from a family that understands professional sports, and he grew up in a locker room, and he understands the dynamic and the love and the connection you have for one another. So
right.
I just think it's really cool, and I think that professional sports and sports in general can be really the lightning rod, really the catalytic kind of movement towards this country understanding our differences are our greatest strengths. Listen,
Right.
man, I grew up, I cut my teeth with the Washington Redskins and the Hogs, but the guys that I try to pattern my life after are some of the strongest men, some of the strongest Christian men, some of the strongest husbands, some of the strongest fathers, and some guys that I try to pattern my life are all black.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
it's Darryl Green, it's Charles Mann, it's Art Monk, it's Monty Coleman. Those guys are those guys, I love them. Those guys are my guys.
They're
And
great
I look
leaders.
at those guys as that's what I want to be.
Right.
That's who I aspire to be.
Right.
You know, I want to be like those guys. And so, I don't know. It just is. You know, when you grow up in that environment, I just think it's, you know, it's like I said, I've been insulated, and I probably haven't done all. I haven't done all that I could do.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the NASCAR guys said it best. It's not just good enough to not be a racist anymore. Like, you got to be
Right.
proactive.
Very true.
And I've always been proactive with the way I have, you know, loved people and had empathy for people and been kind to people. But you know, I think again, it's about standing up for what's right, and you know, and starting to understand. Like, I think you walk out of the locker room, and you know, you're kind of on your own path, and you've got your own family, and you're doing your own thing, and you know, you just tune out to society, and it's time to tune in and say, okay, wait a minute, where do I see things that need to be rectified, and how can I help, and how can I be involved?
Right, and that's a great outlook. Chris, hop in here. You know, let's hear your thoughts on this, because this is a huge topic right now, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Or you know, we could just talk X's and O's, Chris, and we can talk about the Chiefs and what I like about the Chiefs, man. we could do that too. You know what I hate? Honestly,
You know-
okay, let me ask you guys this.
Yeah,
Because the rest of the AFC West, and you know, and
yeah.
let's just face it, we're all piddling down our legs a little bit in the rest of the AFC West, right?
Correct.
Everybody's piddling down their legs, and everybody's like, okay, we got to match Kansas City's speed, and I shake my head. I just am like, are you kidding me? Like, you know, here in Denver, we drafted 2 receivers that can really run, you know, and we're a tight end that won't block his way out of a wet paper sack, but he can run like the wind, you
No
know.
font.
And everybody's praising Elway, and you know, Elway goes on a victory tour, and meanwhile, I just want to, you know, for me personally, you know, it's like somebody pissed in my Cheerios. I'm like, oh gosh, you know, I watch the teams that beat the Chiefs, and it's not that they match up speed-wise. Like, the teams that beat the Chiefs will blitz Mahomes up the middle. They'll play press man, and they'll disrupt routes in critical situations, try to get the timing off, try to pressure Mahomes,
Right.
and try to possess the ball, whether they possess it through running like the Colts did, or they possess it like the Chargers did by just throwing it a bunch, but they'll possess the ball, create first downs, and essentially hold on as the Chiefs come charging back to make it a 29, a 29-30 loss, or what, you know, I mean, you know how it is. You've watched them, right?
Yeah, they're incredible.
So-
It is.
I hear everybody talk about speed, and we're gonna get in a track meet with the Chiefs, and I'm like, you guys are idiots. You don't get in a track meet with the Chiefs because you're gonna lose 100% of the time. So,
Very true.
like, I mean, it's got to feel pretty good to watch everybody piss down their legs a little bit about how they're going to play the Chiefs. I mean, for you guys, right?
It's about time.
Let's not get too prideful. Let's not get too prideful. You guys ain't won shit in 50 years. Okay? So let's not get too excited about it. But it's got to feel pretty good, I would think.
It does. You know, the last couple of years have been, you know, a great roller coaster of emotions. Chris,
Oh,
I know you've been
absolutely.
excited.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, you're good. You know, like you kind of alluded to, who the last couple of years have been really up and down, more so on the up recently since Mahomes has taken over the helm. So Mark, I want to ask you, what do you think that the Denver Broncos need to do in order to truly be competitive with the Chiefs? I know that you kind of talked about it a little bit there with the physicality component, but what direction do you think that the Broncos need to take in order to be more competitive?
Well, I mean, obviously, one of the things that sets the Chiefs apart, which nobody talks about and it irritates me, is that the Chiefs consistently, if you watch the Chiefs play offensively, they're getting 5 guys out in the pattern 80% of the time. Like they're just like, hey guys, we're playing 5-0 protection. And what nobody gives them credit for is Fisher and Schwartz are 2 of the best tackles in football.
Absolutely.
And all anybody wants to talk about is the speed of Kelsey or the speed of Tyreek Hill,
the protection,
or the speed of Sammy Watkins or Markel Hardman or whatever his name is, right? And all I see is shit. They got 5 guys out in the pattern, and this offensive line is holding them. And when it breaks down, obviously Mahomes is scrambles around, which is the worst thing that can happen, right?
Right.
There's a couple things. Like one, there are always those guys. You ask me who I struggle against. There's always those guys that, for whatever reason, you don't match up well against, right?
Yep. Like
the way they play, the way they take a set, even though it doesn't make sense on paper. You look at it on paper, and I always say this about if the games were played on paper, I'd spend a lot less time on the operating table. They're not.
Fair enough.
They're played on a field.
Makes a lot of sense.
And so there are certain matchups that you get into that it makes no rhyme, no reason. There's certain guys that they're just a bitch, right? They're hard.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, Mitchell Schwartz owns Von Miller.
For sure. He does. Yes, you're right.
Owns him. He just owns him. And so the fact that you don't have to tie guys up in protection and that Mitchell can block 58 it's been huge for the Chiefs.
Yep.
I mean, huge.
I completely agree.
And so you don't have to double team them, and you can get 5 guys out the pattern. Like that's going to have to change. I mean, they're going to have to figure out a way to pressure. Most of the time, and I've been watching. I've actually gone back and looked at all of the 8 losses the Chiefs have had. I think it's 8 losses over the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 things stand out to me. How much in critical situations, how much press man the other team plays.
Yes.
Which, you're going to give up some big plays, right?
Right.
But how much press man they play and how important a constricted pass rush lane, like you'll see teams either get pressure up the middle and maintain outside leverage,
right,
where they're just telling those defensive ends don't bite, stay upfield.
Yep.
Or they'll pinch the D ends in. They'll run a tackle end game and tell the defensive tackles, you stay upfield and make sure you corral them and push it back in. And then they'll bring one linebacker and play press man behind it, right? Because the Chiefs want to get everybody out.
Right.
And when you watch it, that's a pretty consistent. That's a pretty consistent theme on the teams that have been able to beat the Chiefs. So that's something that I've noticed a lot looking at that. Not all the time. They'll play some zone behind and they'll do that. But in critical situations, you see a lot of that transpire. So that's one thing that you can do. But, Vic Fangio historically has not been – he's not a real – from a scheme standpoint, he's not a, hey, let's scheme up pressure. He's like, hey, let's find a way to get a one-on-one that's really good. And then he likes, he's historically, he's been more of a cover 2, quarter half. He's been more of a guy that'll play zone back there. And those things have not hampered the Chiefs at all. So,
exactly.
And then I think just offensive line-wise, the Broncos just have to be a lot better. And I think their 2 tackles are a bit of a disaster. So I think they've improved. Well, I say they've improved up front. They went and got Glasgow, who's a good player, but they've got Cushenberry, who is a rookie that they're relying on to be. They're talking about him being really good, but shoot, I don't know. He's a rookie, I mean,
right?
It's a hard transition.
I look at the quarterback position too with Drew Lock, and he grew up in Kansas City, and all throughout his high school career. Right. Andy Reid was the head coach, and then he goes to Mizzou, a place that Andy Reid coached before, he was in the NFL, and it just seems like the Chiefs have more tape on Drew Lock than any team on the planet, and I have to bring that aspect up just because I feel like that's a key piece to Denver's lack of success against Kansas City, or I'm sure that things have changed with the progression of Locke in the NFL, but that has to have a huge play in what's going on with Denver right now.
Right. Well, I think you look at Drew Lock, and all the intangible stuff to me has been great.
Mm-hmm.
Like his third downs, his maintaining the ball, scrambling around, keeping his eyes downfield, making throws. He's done all that stuff exceptionally well. And so, that stuff excites me about Drew Lock.
Right.
One of the things that's been interesting, is everybody sits here and says, well, Garrett Bowles played really well in the last 4 or 5 games of the season when Drew Lock was in. And so they've fixed the left tackle position, and he only had one holding call or some crap like that, even though he leads the league in holdings every year, And they say, Drew Lock did this, that, and the other. And, when I break down film, I look at it like, hey, listen, 60% of the time they were in a heavy, condensed formation, heavy personnel. So they had 2 tights, they had 2 backs, they had 2 backs and a tight end, they had 2 backs, 2 tight ends. They were in 12, or they were in 13, or they were in 21, or they were in 22 personnel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what that does to you as an offense, you condense to throw the ball, right? And
right.
It protects both edges.
Right.
But what it does to you as a defense is you're forced to play a single high safety look.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're playing a single high safety look, you can play 2 coverages out of that. You can play cover 1, man free, or you can play cover 3. Right?
Right, okay.
So, 3 deep zone. So, if you run vertical routes on the outside
toast them.
to cover 3, those corners have to match up.
Right.
Right?
They're on the island.
And it's a matchup principle, right?
Yes.
So you're running. That matchup zone becomes man.
Mm-hmm.
So the underneath covers are different, but the bottom line on the outside, cover 1 and cover 3, if you run vertical routes, releases, it's the same exact coverage, right?
Yes.
So for your quarterback, last year, you broke the huddle in passing situations. You didn't even have to look at the defense. You knew you were going to get rotation. Even if they showed you too high, if the linebackers are, moved over weak or moved over strong, you know what safety's coming down. You know you're getting an 8-man front.
All right, I see.
In those formations out of those personnel groupings.
Right.
So you took all that pressure off that young quarterback. Now they have a new offense coordinator that wants to run everything out of 3 wides. He's historically been in 3 wides 76% of the time. You're going to get combo coverages. You're going to get a lot of different coverages. You're going to get a lot of different blitz schemes. And the thing that people don't tend to realize is when you spread, like Kansas City spreads,
yes.
You know what else you spread? You spread your O-line.
Right.
And you put them in one-on-one positions.
Yes.
Kansas City can hold up. I promise you Denver can.
Right. Yes.
And so that's frightening for me. Like I look at that and that's not a good decision. The fact that you didn't address the edges of your your offensive line is scary to me. I hope I'm wrong, but I never am. I'm always usually right. I mean, I don't like to brag, but
that's going to be a nightmare. I said, have Frank Clark coming around the corner right there. It's going to be a nightmare for Denver.
Yeah. Hey, I agree.
It's going to be scary. Chris, what do you think? I mean, it's going to be scary, but it's one of those things that this is football, and we're moving in a different direction here, and it's fun to watch, and fun to watch the West get fast.
Yeah, it's incredible to see the talent that's come in lately.
Hey, and I'll tell you what.
What was that? I'm sorry, I missed you.
Oh, sorry. No, it's been incredible to watch the talent that's come into the AFC West lately. From the Broncos, from the Raiders, from the Chargers, and then the Chiefs as well. It's been great to see the division return to the dominance that they've had for so long.
Yeah, it has been. I think one of the other things that drives me crazy about the Chiefs is they have no desire to run the ball. And it irritates the crap out of me. Like they'll run it 10 times a game. They'll get 8 yards a carry and they get 12 carries. They just it's so anti what I grew up in with the Redskins and with the Broncos, you know.
Oh yeah.
And it drives me nuts. And they basically like there are a lot of teams that'll play them straight nickel and just say, hey, we'll give you 7 yards a carry, 6 yards a carry.
Yes.
We know you don't want to take it. Right. We know you want to throw it.
Right.
And like one of my keys, and I'll tell you about it on my radio show tomorrow in Denver. One of my keys is just to say, hey, match up and nickel the whole game and let them cram it down your throat.
Yeah.
Because they'll get impatient. They don't want to do it.
Right.
Anyhow, nobody, they just don't. They don't care. And they're so talented. And I will say this for Andy Reid. He's a great designer of plays and a great play caller. I've always thought he's one of the best innovators when it comes to the screen game and all the jet motion crap and all that stuff. He does a phenomenal job. He's a hell of a football coach and a hell of a person. And so I hope he loses every game.
Hey, look, with that being said, Mark, we've appreciated having you on. It has been a pleasure. You've ran longer than we were scheduled for, and I really, really appreciate that. But I've got to give you a chance to promote some of your platforms here real quick before you get off of here. So go ahead and take off on that.
Obviously you can there's a couple things. I'm the worst. Like, I buy high and sell low. I started a referral network right here. It's called Mark's All Pros.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like about 2 weeks before we shut down the country with COVID. So that's really slow rolling right now. But marksallpros.com, if you want to check out that. I still have the Green Chili Company, and we're crushing it. So if you're stuck at home and you want great green chili or great queso dip, stickinggood.com is a great place to go. And then please, listen to my NFL podcast. I do an NFL podcast usually twice a week during the season, once a week during the off season. But it's called the Stinking Truth Podcast. You can get it anywhere podcasts drop. I had Colin Cowherd on last week. He was great. But it's just me and my radio partner, and we just chop it up and have a good time. So the Stinking Truth, if you want to find that. So appreciate you guys. I'm going to read my Post-it notes to make sure I didn't forget anything. And then I'm going to bed because unlike you clowns, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning. You guys probably sleep in to like 7, like that. If I slept into 7, I wouldn't know what to do. I would just, it'd be like my life would be over. I'd ruin my whole day.
Hey, surprising enough, I get up early myself. I'm an early riser, and you got to make the money. The money's got to be made, and somebody's got to do it. So, Mark, I really appreciate that, and I know Chris, you love some green chilies, so Chris will be all over that website for sure. And hey, we look forward to watching you on TV and checking out on ESPN and all those platforms that you're rolling on. So, hey, we really appreciate you coming on, Mark. You have a wonderful night.
My pleasure, guys, and hopefully I get a call at Kansas City game. That would be fun, man. I'm called Kansas City Fox. NFL on Fox called Kansas City game. It'd be great this year. So I'd love to connect with some of the coaches out there. So
let's get you to Arrowhead.
To you guys. By the way, my daughter was on a dating show with Travis Kelce, my youngest daughter.
Hey, Chris brought that up. Yes, Chris brought that up, and we were going to mention that. How did that go?
I did an event with him a couple of years ago, right after that show at the Super Bowl. That I moderated an event. I busted his balls the whole time. It was awesome. It was just awesome. I called him Travis Schlereth.
Hey, and he's a great sport. I know we enjoyed that.
He didn't pick my daughter. The because then he would have had to change his name, in front of the whole crowd. mark-schlereth. Anyhow, hey, you guys have a great one, man. All the best to you.
Hey, you too. We appreciate your time, and take care, brother.
Yep.
All right.
Take care. Have fun.
Yep. All right.
Bye-bye.
Later on. All right. Hey, that was mark-schlereth here on KC Kingdom Radio. I hope you all enjoyed it. We're going to let you get out of here. That interview spoke for itself, and we're excited to have him. We just hope that you enjoyed it, too. You all have a wonderful evening, Kansas City. We will talk with you soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Kingdom Radio, your go-to podcast for everything Kansas City Chiefs.